The war between Russia and Ukraine has entered its 10th month, and the tense clashes between the two countries continue unabated. Grain ships, which have been unable to leave the ports since February due to Russia's pressure on the ports, leading to a food crisis, started shipping after the agreement signed in Istanbul. The first ship, which set off on Monday earlier this week, was anchored at the Bosphorus port in Istanbul, and its controls were ensured. It is known that the ship is now on its way to Lebanon. Today it was announced that 3 more ships will leave Ukrainian ports. It was announced that 3 more ships were approved to leave the port in the process jointly led by the Ukrainian government and the Turkish Defense Ministry. In his statements on the subject, the Ukrainian infrastructure minister informed that 2 ships will depart from Chornomorsk port in the morning, and 1 ship will depart from Odessa port. The 3 ships will carry more than 70,000 tons of Ukrainian corn. The Turkish defense minister said that the ships will sail under the auspices of the agreement signed by the United Nations, Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine in Istanbul on November 28th. He also said that 3 ships will leave Ukrainian ports today and arrive in Turkey, and 1 empty ship will be inspected in Istanbul and then sail to Ukraine. The latest news is that Ukraine has launched a full-fledged counterattack in the southern regions of Ukraine and has completely liberated Kherson from Russian forces and is moving towards Crimea. The brave Ukrainian fighters who liberated Kherson from the Russian occupation are now sweeping Putin's commanders from the region. The war between Russia and Ukraine is now 208 days old. Russia had captured some areas at the beginning of the war, but Ukrainian fighters have recently started to take back the occupied territories with the arrival of reinforcements. Russia was not in full control of the areas it had captured. Ukrainian soldiers turned into a nightmare for Russian troops. The Russian army had withdrawn some of the troops it had sent to the south to occupy the Donetsk region, but this tactic was one of the biggest mistakes Russia made. The Ukrainian army did not forgive Russia's mistake and used this opportunity to give the Ukrainian-Russian army its worst days, because the Ukrainian troops were much better organized on the front line, and their tactical operations were much more planned and organized. In the first months of the war, the Russian army, advancing with the offensive tactic, captured several regions, but could not protect the territories it had captured and changed its tactic to defense. Ukraine, on the other hand, is increasing its successes on the front line and making it difficult for Russian troops in the war with its operations in the region. While the Ukrainian army has been on the defensive since the beginning of the war, it started heavy operations at the end of September, and the first offensive it carried out was so powerful that the Russian army was shocked by this operation. The Russian Navy was badly wounded in the aftermath of this offensive, and Russia's losses have been mounting steadily since then. The Ukrainian army also announced the destruction of several ammunition depots, tactical command centers, and logistics routes of the Russian army. The Ukrainian army said that it was constantly surveying all the areas with Bayraktar and continuously shelling Russian positions with Harpoon and HIMARS missiles. Another hero of these attacks was the M142 missile system sent by the United States. This missile system is highly maneuverable and can launch missiles twice as far as Russian missiles. It was announced that the M142 system has destroyed many Russian warehouses since the day it arrived and caused hundreds of military equipment and military casualties. If we need to talk about the technical features of the weapon sent from America, called M142, this system has a firing range of approximately 70 miles. The M142 system is mounted on the back of a pickup truck and can fire 8 guided missiles. The advantage of the M142 over other artillery systems is that it has a much longer range, which allows it to hit ammunition depots located much further behind the enemy's border. One of its advantages is that it can attack without getting too close to the enemy, that is, without taking risks. The US has sent additional systems and announced that it will send more systems because Ukraine has seen that these systems have been used successfully and Ukraine needs more. In his speech yesterday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg drew attention to the following issues. He said that Russia is practicing today the crimes against humanity that were practiced in ancient times and that Putin is committing a war crime. He called for the unity of all countries. He said that if Putin wins this war, it will mean that his unjust and illegitimate violence is working and that they should support Ukraine until it wins. He also said that if Russia wins this war, it will further increase tensions in the world and could attack other countries. Since February 24th, NATO has done two things it should have done. First, it has stood by Ukraine and provided and continues to provide support to this day. Second, it has taken steps to prevent the spread of this war and imposed sanctions on Russia. It has also praised the Ukrainian people and their brave soldiers in his speeches. Russia has been unleashing unjust aggression and destruction not seen since the Second World War. Many citizens have been forced to flee their territories, and many innocent citizens have been injured or even killed. However, when we look at the course of the war now, it is not foreseen that the thesis that the Secretary General of NATO is worried about, that is, Russia wins, it will attack other countries and think that it is successful will be implemented. Because Russia is currently continuing with many failures in the war. While Russia sees itself as a great power, it has now become unsuccessful and powerless against Ukraine, an innocent country. According to breaking updates from Ukrainian officials, the Russian army is shelling the city of Mykolaiv. However, they said that this attack will also be a failed attempt and they will have to retreat. Russia is attacking the city of Mykolaiv with its air attack weapons. In the statement of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, it was announced that the air defense system worked successfully and there was no loss of life. After back-to-back unsuccessful attacks in recent weeks, Putin has become worried and angry at the same time. The mayor of Mykolaiv, Alexander Sienkiewicz, said that Russian terrorists shelled the port area and residential areas of Mykolaiv this afternoon. He added that there are affected areas and hit houses and high-rise buildings where people normally live. But there are no casualties. There are fires, destroyed buildings, and citizens who are victims. In last night's attack, both numerous rocket launchers and artillery attacks continued throughout the night, but most of them were repulsed. According to Defense Ministry, several of the Russian S-300 launchers that attacked the Mykolaiv region were destroyed. After the agreement signed in Istanbul, the harvest started to accelerate in Ukraine as the ships started to be shipped. Agrarian Policy Minister Mykola Solsky announced that if the Black Sea ports operate even at half capacity, the grains waiting to be shipped in the country's warehouses can be consumed. Ukraine is expected to export around 170 million tons of grain by next year's harvest. Between 9 and 15 million tons of grain is planned to be shipped monthly. Ukrainian Infrastructure Minister Alexander Kubrakov said the other day that a bulk carrier coming to Ukraine to collect grain has passed inspection at the Joint Coordination Center in Istanbul and was expected to start shipping on Saturday.